Hey, welcome to a midday meandering. I noticed on one of my meandering videos the volume seemed to be down a bit. Let me just make sure that it's up on this, and it is. So you should be able to hear me. I'm just in the truck on my own, so no distractions and no other noise. So what could we possibly meandered about today? Well, just lately we've had a whole bout of people appearing one thing and being another. So I thought I would talk about some of the things that I've learned. It may not work for you. I'm not saying that that I speak from a great on a pedestal of wisdom. Wisdom, by the way, does not always come with old age. Old age can often bring cotton wool in the brain that you never quite are able to think through. I have my moments, believe me. So what is it about people that gives you such problems? One thing that I've learned is that everything is about people. It doesn't matter what you do. You can be a musician, you can be a doctor, you can be a dentist, you can be a groundsman at a football stadium. Anything involves people. That's our world, is about people. So you better get some skills for dealing with people. Now, the one that the association that gives us, I think, the most trouble is trying to choose a partner. So but I've done other videos on this, so I won't spend a lot of time on this if I possibly can avoid my usual habit of meandering off into the wilderness. What are some of the basics of trying to choose a partner? Well, I think the trouble is that most of us go by the eye, and if the partner looks right, then for men and possibly for women as well, that seems to clinch the deal. So if the person looks great, then that will do it. I did read that one of the things, the difference between men and women, the difference is that if two guys are talking and one guy says, "Hey, I have a new girlfriend," his friend will ask, "What does she look like?" Now, if it's two women, I've read, correct or not, that if one says, "I have a new boyfriend," her friend will say, "Oh, really? What does he do?" so there is a difference. Looks are very important. Now, the thing is that I've because of good morning. There's a man with two carabao, which I don't know whether you'll be able to see. I love this about where I live. I love this about my life. As in the 2 miles down to the road, I can see a man who is possibly 100 years behind the times or more, and he is riding one carabao, which is drawing a bamboo sled, and the other carabao is moving along in front of him. Wonderful sight, wonderful. Where was I? See, meandering. I don't know why anybody ever gets anything said, because it just seems like you flip from one subject to another. But what? So we were talking about the difference in reaction between a man and a woman when they're talking about they have a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Well, what should we be looking for? And we don't get taught in this in school. In school, we are looking at whether the kid, male or female, whether they're dressed nicely, whether they're pretty, whether they're cool, whatever that is. And we're looking at all of those superficial things, where we should be looking for those things to pull us in, and then the inner qualities should be what keep us there. And so what are the inner qualities? When I talk about qualities, I'm not really talking about oh, he's a great musician, or he's a great businessman, or he's great this, or he's but I am talking about whether he's honest, whether he is truthful to you, and whether he's loyal. The thing is, there's no point in having someone who is beautiful or handsome beyond your expectations, and they're also beautiful and handsome beyond the expectations of a few other people. Now, I've been on the both sides of that. I've been on both sides. Usually we've all, if we're honest with ourselves, not you and me, of course, but actually, seriously, if we're honest, we'll know that we have been lied to, and we have lied. And you know, not always not for everybody, but we've been cheated on, and in some way, whether large or small, we've cheated. So it's it requires some honesty to be able to do this. You can be as honest as the day is long, never thinking of stealing, and yet when you were a kid you probably stole apples, or you know, in my particular case, I used to go with a gang of kids, and we'd go to the pool hall, and we'd spend our lunch money. So what do? We'd go in and we'd nick a cake out of the window of the baker's, stuff like that. When you're 9 and 10 and stuff like that, eventually you learn that all of that is just not right, and you stop, and you learn to be honest. You learn, if you can, to be truthful. Being truthful is one of the toughest challenges, but being loyal, well, you only have to, if you're paying attention, you only have to be cheated on a couple of times to know that you really need to be loyal yourself. Loyalty starts with yourself. So what are some of the mechanics? This is where it all seems to go wrong. Now, we're led to believe that opposites attract, and it is true, but it's dependent on some things. For myself, with Beth, I am completely the opposite of anything that she probably should have married, and vice versa. I love classical music. She loves pop music. She likes TikTok. I would rather watch something that's educational or interesting. She likes many things which I don't. Communication-wise, she is not the same as I am. You could say that maybe, I don't know, maybe you might think of me as being pompous and British, terribly British, which of course I'm not, because I've come from the north of England, Manchester, and a Mancunian does not speak like the Queen. So it's not awfully good to think about this. because we don't speak like that, you see. We speak like this. My brother spoke like this. He used to say, if he didn't like someone and he thought she was a bit of a sissy, he'd say, oh, he's a big girl's blouse. Stuff like that. So we have these expectations, and the expectations should be based on what is going to stand us in good stead throughout the life of the relationship, which we hope will be for life. There are many people around that write to me who have successful, happy, mixed cultural marriages. In our case now, what we're talking about is Filipino and foreign. And they've been married for 30 years. And some of them have quite an age gap. So all of that can be taken into account. But there's some very basic things which are like basic mechanics that we should really know. The sense of reality is a good starting point. Does the person that you think is so wonderful, does she or he have the same view of the world as you? Now, at the moment, it seems like the world is split between those who believe in what is happening as reported by the media, and then there are others who are considered conspiracy theorists, and they have another view of the way that the world is. We won't go into that, but you can see that if two people, one a conspiracy theorist and the other one a staunch believer in the way that things are reported on the media, it's not going to work. So it kind of splits into different items of, or think of it like a menu, and a successful marriage is the outcome. So what's the ingredients of such a recipe? Well, for one thing, you have to have love, and love can be blind. More is written about love than any other subject in the world, in the universe. More is written about love. So you've got to have love there, and love can be based on attraction. Now, the attraction, it must be at a level, surely, it must be at a level which is real. Now, you can get a tricycle driver or a taxi driver or a labourer or someone who works for the post office, or someone who's a politician and doesn't go on the idea that looks are great. So he or she is very ordinary. They're very ordinary looking. They're not outstandingly beautiful. Don't talk about, I'm talking about the superficial look, the look of when you walk into a room. Do people look at you and think, hey, he's a good looking guy, hey, she's a beautiful girl? And everybody has this inbuilt way of measuring, and a lot of it is based on what they see when they look in the bathroom mirror. So our post office worker or our lineman, our Wichita lineman, when they look in the mirror, they have an idea of how handsome or not they are. The degree of handsomeness, the degree of attractiveness is there, and they know it. They know it. I introduced someone who we were very familiar with to someone back in the US, and I introduced them, and his reaction was, she's too beautiful for me. And that's real, because if you're with someone, if you try to hook up with someone who is beyond your own assessment of your own attractiveness, you'll be very uneasy. It will be difficult for you. It will be a challenge for you to trust. So get that out of the way. Now, the other thing is, very simple things. What are the person's interests? And if their interests are not yours, it's wise to at least assess whether their interests can be something that you will become interested in. There are lots of women who are sitting next to their guy at the football match or at the baseball match or at the if you're talking here, the basketball game, and they're bored out of their minds, but they're with someone that they adore, so they do it. Well, if you can do it and be happy with it, then that's great, but it's better if it's a natural joining. For Beth and I, we had, even though this was intuitive at the beginning, we eventually ended up having a mission that was totally in sync. You could not live our life if you did not have a partner who was totally in sync, because we give up too much in terms of time and money and just attention and heart. We give up too much for the other person not to share. So Beth and I are like this. We are in sync like a dovetail joint. But you may find someone attractive, and it may be very workable that he is a stockbroker and you are a nurse. And those two things, they can be sorry, I'm checking on something that I ran into yesterday and it's all been put back. So all of these things can, if you both get home and you can both share what each other did and be interested from that viewpoint. I'm not let me see, I'm not a motor mechanic, but I could listen to someone who is a motor mechanic talking about that. I'm not a golfer, but to a limited extent I could listen to talk about golf, so you get my meaning. So you should be able to share on that basis. But then there's other little mechanical things that we never hear about, or I never hear about them. How does he communicate? How does she communicate? Now, if when you ask the person, if you're one who speaks fast, then you're going to be incredibly impatient if the other person speaks slow. Now, I'm talking about that gap between the question and the answer. What's the time? A little bit before 10 to, oh my God, you'll be dying, right? But on the other hand, if you actually have a trouble in deciding whether you want to ask what the time is, and you then, I'm being attacked by marauding children. They're all going there. They've got a basketball and they're going to play basketball. And they're running across the road without looking. So you should have a similar speed of communication. And so if this is not there, you can work around it. It's okay, you can work around it. You can work around all of these things, but if they mount up to too much, if you have no interest in what he does, if you have no interest in what he likes to do, the music he plays, the speed at which he talks, and they all mount up a little bit, then the fact that he's a cool dude is going to wear very thin. That's my assessment of it. So, well, we're actually down at the road now, so I'm going to get ready to pull out. Let me see, what have we done? 20 minutes. Okay, hold on. So now, then it goes, that would be the personal thing. So enough on that perhaps. But what about choosing your friends? We have no guidance at all, except the anecdotal guidance that comes from a pal. So what should you be looking for in a friend? Well, all of those things we talked about in the beginning. Can the girl be loyal? It's going to be very important. It's not just whether they're loyal in a romantic way. Are they going to be a loyal friend? When someone badmouths you, are they going to stand up and say, no, wait a minute, she's not like that at all? So that's one of the things you need. Are they going to be honest with you? Now, initially, when you start talking to someone, let's say you meet someone at a party, or you meet someone as a third party thing. So you're there and your friends are there, or your wife or your husband is there, and then you start talking to someone that's there. Now, this is one of the things that I've noticed has stood me in good stead, even though some of it I've learned of late. If this is mostly with guys, if a guy says to you, and I've actually had this, these are two examples that I've had. If a guy says, he's describing how he can be tough. If he says, I'm an arsehole, run away. No need to talk anymore about that. Run away. Don't ever go back. Don't call him. Rub his phone number out of your book. Tell him that you're leaving the country. Whatever. Don't go back. I worked for someone in the UK. I worked for someone, and up front I gave them an agreement, and he looked at the agreement. He said, well, yeah, I could drive a bus through it, but whatever. And he signed the agreement. Then he said something which I should have taken notice of straight away. He said, I can be a guerrilla in warfare. I can be a guerrilla. Meaning that it would, if you got into a disagreement with him, it would be no holds barred. So no point in putting your fists up and saying Marcus Queensberry rules, sir, because he would be kicking you in the nuts. I should have walked away then. I walked away very soon after that. I went to look at a job that would have in California, which would have been very good for me. It was to fit a kitchen, to design, build and fit a kitchen. Custom kitchen. I used to make custom furniture. And when I went there, I spoke to the guy. He was very amicable. I thought I could work with him. And then his wife came home. And his wife was, I think, 6.5 or 7 months pregnant. And she was very stressed out. And she stood me there with her husband. And she pointed the finger at both and said, if this kitchen is not finished a week before I go in to have the child, there's going to be trouble. I assured her that I would do my very best to finish the kitchen in very good time, and I thought I could do it, but there's always little things that come up that make it impossible. Well, I left and I was driving away, and I thought, this is not going to work. So I called them back immediately and I said, I think you should get someone else. Thank you for considering me. And as it was the husband that was on the phone, I said, and by the way, good luck. So you've got to be careful. Sometimes people are telling you right up front everything that you need to know, whether they're friends or people that you're going to work for. Listen to what they're saying. Now the other thing, I've got to finish off on this because I'm almost where I need to be. The other thing is that as the other person shares their life with you, because that's what happens if you're talking to someone and he's a motor mechanic, he's going to start telling you, yes, I work for Ford, or I'm an independent, I work on the road, or I have a workshop and it's down the road, and what I concentrate mostly on, and he's telling you about what he does. And then sometimes, if it's a long conversation, you'll get a bit of history as well. Yes, I started when I was 15 and did an apprenticeship, and you know, if the woman is a nurse or she's an attorney or whatever she tells you. Now, this is the key factor, I think. What they tell you in their history has to match up to their present situation. I've met someone who had wonderful work, was a great worker in his field, had $1 million bonuses for doing a good job, had a company, talked about the problems that he had with his staff and how he dealt with it, and how he used various techniques, and he was in fact something not of a psychic but extremely intuitive when it came to judging people's character, which all was really excellent skills for running what seemed to be an extremely wealthy company. Now, why didn't that make sense? Because he didn't seem to have any money, that's why. And he couldn't seem to get it. So it didn't make sense. Now, was he a good conversationalist? Yes, he was actually. He was quite pleasant. It was not hard to be there and talk about world events, all this stuff, but it never quite made sense. Now, you'll find the same thing with a lady. How I wouldn't have any examples to be able to give you, but what she says should make sense with the circumstance that she finds herself in right now. That's my thought on that. For me, I really do try to tell the truth, to say the way that the world is for me. How is the world? What's my viewpoint of it? And my viewpoint of it is congruent with the way that my life is right now. I don't go out and do expensive things because I'm not wealthy. And I'm not wealthy because this kind of success that I had in my life, which was as a musician, I was not a famous musician, I was a working musician. And the kind of band that I worked in was not a successful band as far as the media goes. We didn't have hit records even with my own band. So the way that my life is now makes sense. And that's what it should make. It should, when you meet someone, the way that they describe their present and their past should go together. So I'm almost where I should be. And I'll stop meandering. Some people call it waffling. I can't blame them.